Hi, everybody. This is Heather Locke with Lasting Conversations, and we are in studio today. This is an amazing setup. I've been on the road and on Zooms for quite a bit of episodes, so it's just amazing to be here. And today we are with the gentlemen of the Back Nine. We're with Dennis Williams and Josh Mora.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here. And we're actually collaborating today because they have their own show. So we're tag teaming. They're on my show. I'll be on their show. So welcome, guys.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
So thrilled to have you invite us on. Thanks.
It's so great. It's so fun. And tell me about the Back Nine. It's a golf reference. And what's very cool, as I just had my birthday, ending my year 60 and now 61 yesterday. And you guys are gentlemen of a certain age, and we've all been around a few blocks. So tell us about a Back Nine and where it is that you're going philosophically with what you're doing with your show.
Sure. Well, first of all, Heather, happy birthday.
Thank
Thrilled
you.
to be here on your birthday.
Thanks.
So the Back Nine is, for people who don't play golf, it's a golf metaphor, right? That you play 18 holes. There is a front nine, the first nine. Usually in the U.S., that means you come back to the clubhouse after 9 holes, and then there is a second nine. So the metaphor is when you're on the back nine of life, you are in the second half of life. And I think we approach this from the standpoint of men getting to that point in life where we have, there's the whole midlife crisis. Well, there isn't a crisis. It doesn't have to be. But there are certainly times where we kind of reconsider what it is that we're getting out of life at that point. Maybe it's that our kids are leaving the house to go to college, or they're still in high school and about to, or you're halfway through our careers, and we're thinking about, well, what haven't I accomplished yet? What do I want to do as we start to think about, well, we may be at that time of life where we should start working on those goals and those objectives.
Right.
And so that's what we kind of approach on our podcast, the issues that we face and confront, the challenges that we want to undertake, and the things that we can accomplish on the back nine of life.
That's really cool. And I know you have a really great lineup of people that delve into all kinds of great topics. So what is it that you feel is bringing into the show, the Back Nine, and how did you guys come to doing a podcast from your careers?
Well, we were both broadcast journalists for the first part of our career. We have amazingly similar backgrounds. We went to very, very small colleges. Hamilton College and Amherst College, if you don't know, they're called NESCAC schools. They're called small Ivies. So we both he was an English major, I was a history major, and then we both ended up in broadcast TV in Buffalo. We'll cut to the chase here. Mm-hmm. We were both sportscasters for almost 20 years apiece, and have had other iterations of our careers since then. So we've always been around microphones. We've interviewed a lot of people over the years. So what happened really was during COVID. He and I were going through a lot of different things at the same time. We both went through divorces at the same time, being out there in the dating world again. We found ourselves, because you weren't seeing anybody or talking to anybody, spending a lot of time on Zoom and discussing this. And we were like, this is some pretty deep stuff that we should be sharing with other people. We know what we're doing, talking to each other, and we helped each other out of difficult situations and things like that. And we just realized that this could be a pretty good podcast. Nobody's really doing this, delving into guys talking about, feelings and certain circumstances in their lives and things that are happening to them, and all of the things that, that are a little different, and making that okay. So that was where it came from. And then we, to be honest with you, we're so old school, we had to find this studio. So, you talked about being on Zoom and you being back in a studio. We have to be. I mean, he comes in from Orlando. We're here in Delray Beach. We're really old school. He still says taping on episodes. So do I.
I love it.
We're taping. It's the vernacular.
Yeah.
Tape's been over for 20 years. But, so it's been great. I mean, I think us sitting across from each other in the studio, but it really, we set out to have it not be about us, to have it be about bringing on great guests and having you be able to take away 2 or 3 really cool things from those guests. And we've had great men, great women, a lot of people that come from our broadcast background, some celebrities. It's just been it's really fun for us to get together and scout out the next seasons, the next guests, the next who's going to get on, what's the topic going to be. We really, and we're usually in sync on all of that, on who we want to have on and what kind of stories we want to tell. Because at our core, as broadcast journalists, we're storytellers. So we kind of want each episode to tell a story. And I feel like we do that for the most part.
I think too, Dennis, and Heather, I appreciate the question a lot. We wanted to get into a position, as Dennis was describing, that we were all kind of alone during the pandemic, and this was a way for us to communicate. At the time Dennis was living in California, we've obviously been good friends for over 25 years. It was a way for us to stay in touch, and we were
alone
going
and soul searching. That's the
Yeah,
common nugget there. We were all in this place of okay, now what?
That's right.
Right.
And for a lot of men who are going through these kinds of issues already, there was a real a danger of getting into a downward spiral, of feeling like you were alone, and that being amplified in the pandemic.
Right.
And so the whole idea of the podcast is to get men feeling comfortable about talking about things that they don't normally talk about, and for our audience to feel like they are participating in that conversation. And it's interesting that a lot of our audience has been women, because they don't get to hear those. To the extent that men do talk about those things, we don't talk about those things in front of women. So they get to listen in and be kind of voyeurs into that. And to Dennis's point about some of the guests, we've had a lot of great women who have talked about, I think of a couple of episodes. One was about a woman who has an amazing journey about being a single mom and raising 3 girls together. And so for the men in our audience, how can we be better supporters, either as co-parents or as supporting single moms that we might date or find in the workplace? We had another person talk about overcoming a second DUI and how that scared him straight into sobriety, and what he's done with that second chance after he served some time for that. So there have been some really revealing stories where people have been wonderfully open to being vulnerable with us and talking about these things, and hopefully making that available to our audience.
That's beautiful, and that's why we mesh. We've met a few times, and this show is all about getting to the heart of things. And I really appreciate the male perspectives, as a matter of fact, and because everything can lean one way or to the next. They're a bunch of bitches or they're a bunch of assholes, and this is common ground. And that your guests, talking about being girl dads and having that vulnerability. I don't know if you've had Ben Curtis on your show yet. Our producer put me in contact. He works with men, and to have that comfortability of having dudes in your corner in ways that perhaps they never have before. So he'd be a great guest too. I'll just make that plug for you.
Yeah.
So to have the male perspective and to accommodate and include the female perspective as well, because we are all in this together. So that's really the fun part of both of our shows, and I really appreciate both of you doing that. Have you had some amazing moments? And I will circle back to these chapters, and I like how your whole show is split up in these golf metaphors. The beginning, and then the other chapters by the time you get to your 18th hole. So tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, I think what we do is we try to have the season have a little bit of an arc, right, and have like I said earlier, some stories to each episode. I would say that in what you were talking to, the metaphor of the front nine is like early in the front nine. You're just getting your feet under you. You're just trying to figure out what you're going to do. You start to realize one of the most compelling things we had in the first season was your resume goals is the front nine, and your eulogy goals is the back nine. You want to know what your legacy is going to be. And that theme has come up time and time again. What is my legacy? What am I leaving behind? The front nine, you're just worried about the job, how much money you're making, who you're hanging out with, all those kinds of things, right? The back nine, you start to realize, how are people going to remember me? What are they going to say? How many people are going to be, at my funeral? I mean, I hate to be morbid, but who's going to go and who's going to care, right? And what is your legacy? So I think that's kind of the arc. You kind of gradually make your way towards trying to figure out what that legacy looks like.
That was a topic brought up by a guy named John Callahan, who was in episode 12 of our first season, and we number the episodes 10 through 18 because it's the back nine.
Perfect.
And his story stemmed from his experience. He was actually in attendance at the Route 96 concert in Las Vegas when the guy was at the top of Mandalay Bay and started opening fire.
Oh, geez.
And so he was sitting there dodging bullets thinking, if I die now, how am I going to be remembered? I mean, yes, I love my wife and kids are going to love me, but have I done the things that I would be proud of? And his answer was no, even though he had been incredibly successful. And then it was a theme that was repeated in season 2, episode 16. One of our guests is the producer of the movie Pretty Woman and other movies, and he totally separately of his own volition, brought up kind of the same notion of being halfway through his life and thinking, I'm not doing the things that are making me proud of what I'm doing. Even though I like what I have done,
Sure.
there's more there, and I want to make that shift.
This is amazing. And I'm immediately, in one way, going to the Talking Heads with David Byrne's old video, Stop Making Sense. How did I get here?
Yeah.
And he's doing this on his arm where it's almost like you're slicing, you have different iterations of your life, but what is making sense, and what do I need to do to pivot and maybe make a reverse change or see what else is next? And these moments are very, very interesting. I had and sometimes they're just in our face. That's so remarkable. Just last week, I was at a diner and I sat over in a corner, and there was a young woman, I can call her a girl, but a young woman. And we got to talking, and the depth of our conversation just started going there. And to make a very long story short, I was thinking in my head, oh my goodness, am I talking to my 22-year-old self? Because she's 22. Mm-hmm. She bursts into tears and says, I think I'm getting wisdom from my older version self. And
wow.
we just had this moment because it was so true that I could recognize what I was offering was from, I'm actually going to call it the middle 9, because we have another 60 years. So we really are, we have all extra chapters. Maybe golf will continue to the 36th round. So that I could be imbuing things that I have learned from my own holy shit moments and the messengers and mentors along the way in therapy or whatever else. And that she so was hungry to know it's okay to make some massive, massive changes, especially if people aren't going to want you to do it. So this was, somehow it all ties into what your show is about. When we come to these moments in our life that continue, and you continue with your chapter, you go to the next hole, you go to the next round. Maybe you play a whole nother game the same day, a doubleheader, I'll start some baseball. So all these things, and you guys bring really juicy people that are open to share these things.
Well, I think that what that young lady showed about herself, which is another common theme for us, is she showed you that she was curious. She was curious about you.
Yes.
She was asking you questions. It wasn't just about her.
Yep.
I'm sure she was, and that's why you guys are able to have that sort of conversation. So one of the, overwhelming themes, and it seems basic, but it's just a big part of what we're talking about, is being curious at this age, right? So it's profound that somebody that young is asking you questions about things in the future and stuff like that. I think that is such a critical thing to be on the back 9. And if you think about it, a podcast listener is curious, right? They're exploring different subject matters. Maybe in this day and age, they're like me and they can't read, or they can't concentrate long enough to actually read a book, so they want to listen to things. So I think that's huge. I mean, I think everybody can find. There's so much information out there now too.
Right.
That being curious is such an important part of the back 9.
I want to pick up on something else, Heather, and that was from your perspective and point of view on that conversation,
right,
which is the joy of mentoring,
yes,
right? And I think that's something that all of us, as we search for our legacy, we want to try to imbue that legacy in as many people as possible. If we're proud of what we've done, or to help other people avoid the same mistakes that we did, or provide that perspective. And, we can do that with our own kids, but our relationships with our own kids, as wonderful and as deep and complex as they are, there are certain, resentments. Dad, I mean, how many times I've heard that, right, from my girls. But, and I find sometimes it's easier. People are more open to listening when it's not, you don't have all of those other complexities within that relationship.
When it's not your closest people, you can hear it from a coach, from a teacher, from the person next door.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so what I've tried to do for my own parenting is pivot my daughters and go listen to other people. Right? Here's someone else I think you can find, and you may hear what I said. You may hear a totally different opinion, and that's fine.
Right.
But I do think that there's something about wanting to reconnect and wanting to stay vital and wanting to stay relevant in today's world with the generations that are coming up.
I think that's so true. And what other fresh nuggets from your own shows or from your circumstance that would have this sort of flow and what it is that you're doing, that this is jazzing you, and your kids are older now and things, all that good stuff, that this is kind of a great time to create and recreate things professionally, personally.
Well, it's interesting that you phrase it that way, Heather. The one that immediately jumps to mind was our last episode of season 1 with a woman named Carol Negrelli, who we both knew, who she was in the media with us at the same time in Buffalo, and Dennis is throwing me killer looks like you just stole mine. I don't know if it, but she
That's what friends do.
She got divorced, married somebody who was also in the business, gave up her career to follow his, but she was done with the career and rediscovered her love of playing music. She had played the cello when she was a girl and when she was in high school, and had put it aside and hadn't picked it up in decades. And the free space allowed her to do that and discover the joy of creating, in this case, creating music.
Right.
We're creating a podcast. You're creating a podcast. It's a different, art of a sort. And now she's playing in symphony orchestras in Nebraska, which is where they live. And so I forget if it's the Nebraska Symphony Orchestra, the Omaha, a big deal, right? I mean, she's obviously very, very talented, but for her, it's all stemmed from rediscovering a passion that she had put aside a long time ago.
Yep.
And so that is something that I take away. Find what those are. They may be something that you buried a long time ago. They may be something that you're discovering for the first time, right? It might be hiking or paddleboarding or something you've never done. It might be, shooting hoops or running or swimming or playing the cello.
Right.
And I mean, that's so important. The other thing is about Carol, and I'll just do an aside here, is that here's somebody I hadn't spoken with in 20 years, right? And that's what this show has done so much for us. It's allowed us to really reconnect with people from all walks of life in our past that are just terrific, like terrific old friends. And we talk about former athletes we want to have on the show, which is great. And we're projecting ahead to, we can get that former NFL player right before football season. Let's do that because he'll be great. So we're thinking about those kinds of things now, too. I'll give you one episode that really, literally, profoundly helped me at the time the episode launched. Mm-hmm. So our 5th episode of season 1, so it's 14th hole?
14th hole, yeah. I'm here for the math.
So that episode, a good friend of mine from college, Jim Rushton, was on that episode. And he has a completely different path than I had, even though we had similar backgrounds. He was married to his career for a long, long time, and sacrificed having a family until very recently. So here he is, 53 years old with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, somewhere in that range, like crazy young.
And a 2-year-old at 53.
Right.
My God.
So, and he still has very high-powered jobs. He's still carrying like a lot of weight on him for this career. His career hasn't just stopped. So what he said was he had read some things about and trained himself to compartmentalize. And sometimes that's a word that doesn't have a good connotation.
Right.
But if you're a type A personality, and I have a lot of these traits of like not being able to focus on more than one thing, it's such an important word, right? So being able to take a moment to put everything else aside and focus on that moment that you're in and be present. So compartmentalize, put the work away and focus. So right after that episode, right when it launched, I went on a cruise with my family right after Christmas. And I had moments on that cruise where I would normally have been checking, even on a cruise, you can check your work email, you can do everything now, they have perfect Wi-Fi. So I was like, I literally would leave my phone in the room. I was focused on my parents. I was focused on my sister and her kids and my fiance. I became more present on that trip, and it wouldn't have happened had we not had that episode. So, have I perfected it yet, the compartmentalizing? Nope. but I'm working on it.
No, but that's amazing. And that's where, and I usually say each one reach one or teach one. And I've had those moments too, where in the middle of the show, we can both get the goosebump moments or the tearful moment because something has just landed. And there's something for us behind these microphones at the same time as what's meant out for the collective. So I appreciate that you're just saying that. the phrase that keeps coming to mind in these conversations that you guys especially are having is now going back to talk to your old friends or colleagues as grown-ass adults, right? So, and part of that was that focus or that race. And collectively, when you think that you're in your 20s and you're supposed to be grinding and hustling and this and this and this, and of course the new generation is saying, not necessarily, that's a different show. But when we were growing up, that was it. You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that. For the guys, it was usually about the providing and the career and career. Women, yes, the career, and also TikTok,
Yeah.
if you're having a kid and who's the right guy. And we were all searching who's our love and all of these things. So now to come to a different space as grown-ass adults, are you finding that the very conversations that you're having with old colleagues, old friends, are from a whole different vantage point?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Heather, I think both of us Dennis and I have lives that are busy, right? The podcast is not the only thing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you, speaking just for me, that there is nothing that I'm doing in my life that feels more aligned with my true self and my spiritual self than doing this podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think it's amazing to me how, we said this earlier, but how vulnerable people are and how willing they are to show their scars. That's, to me, that's like what life is about. It's about, if you're willing to talk about your scars, you've made it somewhere. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing these people, a lot of them, Mark in particular, the person who had the DUIs, who's a public figure. I thought he might not want to do this again and bring it all up again. And he couldn't have been more gracious and happy to be on the show. And it's one after another. And they're talking about really difficult stuff and not always complimentary stuff either, right, for their lives. So I've been amazed that we've had zero no's. Everybody we've asked has wanted to be on the show and not hidden from their past or what they want to talk about. And every person has a great story to tell, and they're all different. So, again, I just come back to the stories. There's so many good ones.
And I think we're giving them a safe space to tell those stories. They feel very comfortable there.
Exactly
so it's a really interesting listen because of that.
Yeah. You're so true. The safe place to be vulnerable and to be human. That's mine. I'm team human. And I don't know about you guys, but you get approached with so-and-so wants to be on your show. Sure, but is that nothing but a sales pitch? And that for me, to be the honor of being in the chair means that you're going to come in as a human, that you have something of more depth versus I have a book to sell you, right? Because there's a million shows for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are fielding those inquiries also.
I don't think we would even bother with that because
Correct.
we're trying to create a community.
Yes.
And unless there's a story that aligns with what we're trying to do, then I don't think there's any possibility we would never do that. We talked about doing a show with no sponsors in it. That's how much we wanted to just create a community. I mean, it's not really realistic, but it's one of those things where Facebook didn't put any ads on their platform or have any paid ads for years because they wanted to create a massive community, right? Lots of social media companies have tried that formula. So, there is something to be said for that. Really, that's what we're trying to do.
So, where do you see your next 9, your next season, your next iteration? Do you see more TV cameras, or I'm going to ratchet that back because we're all in a little step at a time, stepping stones, right?
Yeah, we do. And we do have a video component now. I mean, as you know, these are all done on Zoom, and we do publish the Zooms on YouTube.
Yep, find us on YouTube.
Yes, and we would like to also, be on more of a set at some point, or at least experiment with what that looks like.
Right.
So there's that. And then the guest, we continue to expand. The first season for us was very much about people that we knew personally and had known for a long time, kind of creating the expectation. Season 2, which is now entirely recorded, has been a variety. Some things that have been more topical. We mentioned the brave single moms. We've had a couple of celebrities. One we mentioned the Hollywood producer. Mm-hmm. We have another guy who's producing one of the top TV shows. The head writer and co-creator of one of the top TV shows on HBO Max right now. And then in season 3, I think we feel like expanding that. We have a balance of people we've known, some people for the first time who are really new to us, some things that are going to be topics, fitness on the back nine, spiritual connection on the back nine, and somewhere we have a couple of celebrities that are already booked that I think will be very, very interesting to our audience.
That's great. So I'll go ahead and ask, because I don't want to shorten the show too much here, is from your male perspective, from your dad perspective, from your life perspective as the males, what are you saying, what are you feeling that people really should know, kind of a man-to-man moment?
Well, that's a good one.
Because, you know,
great
I
question.
think, and I'm not a golfer, but I hear tell that a lot of conversations, a lot of stuff happens out on these golf courses. And maybe, you know, the women have a coffee clutch or they've had sewing circles, or they tend to be a little more social and can chat away or find the vulnerable places. Where is it from the male perspectives, especially without having that go-go career that's eating your life up? Where are people from the guy perspective having these moments together so they feel that they're in community?
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the construct, right? I mean,
Right.
to the extent the guys open up, it tends to be after we've spent that kind of time together, which is
Right.
why we do it on the 19th hole. We're having a beer after a round of golf, and we might say, tell me about that investment that you're in, or how did you find that? Or, hey, are you still dating that brunette that you were dating 3 months ago, whatever it might be. And so I think what we're trying to create is for men to understand not only is it okay to release these feelings or to talk about these, even if you don't want to necessarily talk about how you feel about it, but just to talk about them.
Sure.
It's necessary. It's how you get to a deeper connection. If you really want more out of life, this is kind of what you've got to do. Be grounded. Be grounded in your masculinity, right? It is actually a masculine thing to be able to talk about these things because it comes from a place of inner awareness and groundedness,
Right.
As opposed to how we sometimes see masculinity portrayed, deployed, with bluster and bloviation and that kind of thing. Calm, understanding, patience, really inquiring about the people who are around you and being curious on a personal level, not just on an experiential level. And I think that's what we've created so far on the back nine.
And I think also, too, you guys talked about being mentors and how important that is for a younger generation or other people.
That's a good point.
I think we're still looking for mentors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so if I'm sitting there, after a round of golf and maybe somebody's the same age, maybe they're a little older, I may be getting a lot of advice from them. There's still a lot for me to learn, and there's still a lot of people that I can talk to that can mentor me about different things. So I'm constantly in that phase, is trying to listen to people. I think that's, if I was going to tell men anything right now, just be better listeners. We aren't at our core. We're always like attacking and talking and da-da-da-da-da. That's how I feel anyways. And I've tried to take the practice of being a better listener. And I think that's important, whether you're dealing with other men or you're dealing with women in your life, or this is one of our shows, if you're trying to date, be the listener. She'll let you know if she wants to know all about you. She'll let you know. But what you should be trying to do is learn as much about her as possible on that first date. So, we kind of talked about that at the Podfest. What to do in those situations. So hopefully, you're finding guys that will listen to you, because that's the key.
Yeah, we'll get to that part.
Maybe that's for our show.
I love it.
we'll
But
get
this
that
is
show.
it. But I am with guys that are doing that. Right.
That's great.
And when I just recently traveled, and another serendipitous moment, there was a gentleman having business in town, and we didn't call it a date, but I recognized I'm having a great conversation with a very nice guy. We're just talking about stuff. So
great.
without having it feel like a setup of, and now I'm on a date. We'll talk about it on your show. And You
Okay.
can have me on your show.
Okay.
But that the notion of what the relationship can look like on another chapter, especially in the old, done me wrong chapters. But, and I guess going back to the kids, now, how old are your kids? And do you have step iterations of family as well? Because that's a whole nother navigation.
Yeah, we each have two daughters that are 3 years apart.
Yeah.
My oldest and his youngest are, 6 weeks apart, 8 weeks apart?
Yeah.
Roughly, mine's a little older. So I have the youngest. She's still in college. The other three are all out.
Okay.
With steps, my girlfriend has 3 kids, one who's in college, and 2 in high school, one who's graduating this year. And so actually one of our episodes was about blended families
Yes.
and how to bring those things together. So that's the current status.
Yeah.
I have a 26-year-old and a 23-year-old and a fiance who I guess presumably will be the stepmom by the end of the year. But yeah, it's a good situation for us. My girls get along very well with my fiance, so it hasn't been a big issue. I think it's about, again, honesty, being straightforward, being around them. They're grown women now, 26, 23, so they're gonna have their own opinions and be present when they need to be. So I think that it's been good. They've done a good job. So it's never easy to navigate that part of life.
Sure.
But for the most part, it's gone well.
Well, that's great. And let's not forget, obviously, they have their own chapters. So they knew Daddy as little kids. And then life happened and whatever careers and all that, and then divorces and all of that. So now are you finding, and I find this with my own kids, forging a new relationship with them as adults.
Oh, yeah.
So let's touch on that for real quick, as the guys.
So we talked about this in an episode too. So I actually give dads advice on this a lot, and that is, they're always your little girl. But at some point, you have to make that transition where they become your friend, and that day is the hardest. And it's not like gradual; it's literally overnight. Like you have this one. In my situation, it was almost like a fight with each of them. We didn't fight very much, but it was like, and I said, you know what? You think she's still your little girl. You've got to make that transition. And the next time, I recognized it with my second one. So it was like literally, you flip a switch, and you've got to be like, treat them as an adult. Treat them as a friend. You're still going to be a parent. You're still going to give them the parental advice and all those things. Don't get me wrong there. But you just can't, they just can't stay. In the back of your mind, they're always your little girl. But forward interacting with them, how you are on a day-to-day basis, how you communicate with them, you have to realize that they're not your little girl. And it is hard. Chokes me up to even talk about it. But it is, but you got to do it. As a man, you have to do it. And I'll be honest with you, they'll respect that because all I've ever wanted with my girls was to see some of me in the guys that they end up with. It's not that it's not like I want them to marry their exact dad, but I want them to see characteristics, values, things that I presented to them in their significant others someday. That's all I hope for.
Yep.
But he's vain that way. So no, I'm kidding. He's totally right.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it. It was just a joke, but I'm going to take it a slightly different direction while agreeing with everything that he just said, because I do agree with everything he just said. Which is, when you're co-parenting with somebody, even when you're in a marriage, you're going to disagree sometimes about what is the best thing to do. You have different values, different upbringings, etc., and that becomes more pronounced when you're no longer together, right? Suddenly, I don't have. If I disagreed with something with my ex-wife when she was my wife, we could talk it through and say, what's the best approach together? Now we don't have that kind of language. So when I have no doubt that my ex-wife loves my daughters with every bone in her body, every fiber of her being. I disagree with some of the ways in which that then gets deployed, and I know she feels the same way about my styles too. So when you disagree and your children might take up one side or the other, especially if they take up the other side, it's really important to put your ego aside and either, you don't have to fight about that. You don't have to tear down, your ex-spouse for their belief or whatever. You just have to keep showing up for your kids. And, there have certainly been times when I've disagreed with things my kids are doing, and we'll talk about it. And I'll say, this is my position. I understand yours. Okay, we've talked. We agree that we disagree. I'm still here.
Right.
Period. And we keep showing up for them no matter what.
I love all of it, both of the blends of what you were just saying. And of course, the notion of, and I had my own come to Jesus moments of myself of realizing, who am I? It's about that modeling that you were touching on. Am I being the best self for each of my kids? And somehow I'm landing mostly on my daughter, but my son too, because am I following up in this marriage? Am I saying all of these things are okay? Because I don't want her to go through this too. So all of those moments when you're having to look at, oh, am I my best self for my kids, and what are they seeing that I'm not even seeing? But to your point of, oh, wait a second, who is she going to be marrying, and who is he going to be marrying? Am I projecting my best self and showing what a good, healthy relationship is looking like? And so there were in the days that I realized, oh crap, no, it's not looking like that, and that's not what I want for my kids. I don't want to hand them a shit show.
Right.
So it's up to me to do my own part. I can't be fixer to everybody.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I liked that notion of where are we again present, and let them be their own new people. They're going to have their own journey and find their new people, who we wish them to love and admire and respect them. We want mutual respect. And I did just watch a dad give away his little girl at a wedding on Saturday. And it was beautiful. And his speech was talking about when she was little and making that transition into now she's a grown woman. And there was just one photo, only a couple of the whole professional, but the photo of he did one dance the whole night, and it was with her daughter, his daughter. And the look on his face, just looking at his daughter, was exactly what you guys were talking about. And I will just say, from the female perspective, guys get a hard rap. They just do. And some ladies like to freeze out the dads, and I don't think that's not healthy at all. So to have these moments, to be a girl dad and a guy's dad, now that they're growing into grown-ass adults, it's a magical time. It can be difficult, but it really is. Who do they get to see in us so that they can fly and draw to them the best people for them?
Yeah, I think from the parent's perspective, it's recognizing, and especially the dad's perspective, we can't fix anything. At this point, we're not supposed to fix.
Right.
We need to listen.
Yep.
We need to articulate our points of view about why we think they might be doing something that is unhealthy or dangerous or not in their best interests.
Right.
But in the end, we have to stop. We also have to listen to what their perspective is.
Right.
And trust that if we've done our jobs as parents at any point, and this is not anything that's also fixed, that they'll hear it, and then we let it go, and then we let them
go.
The way they really become full people is not by us controlling them.
Correct.
It's by us articulating our perspective and then letting them make their decisions.
That's it.
Yeah, I'll give you one more thought too, and that is, you sometimes have to navigate with the things that you realize you might not have been taught properly. And what I mean by that is, I had a great upbringing, great parents and everything, but there were certain things that I'm doing differently. And one of those is, and we talked about this, is start at yes. A lot of people in your life tell you, they will stack the reasons why you can't do something. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's their whole, and even if you overcome that, you still had to overcome all the no's. You had to sell through the no's to get to the yes. My mantra has been for the last several years, maybe the last decade, and I've tried to instill this in my kids, is start at yes. Mm-hmm. You can sell me on no later. Okay. I might not always stay at yes. And there might be a lot of reasons not to say at yes, but I'm going to start there. And then you're going to have to sell me on no instead of starting at no and selling me on yes. And that's probably the number one thing that I've tried to instill in my kids that was not instilled in me, that I had to kind of figure out myself. Mm-hmm. And I hope that and I think for the most part, looking at their lives at 26 and 23, that they are in a big way doing that. In a big way, they're doing that. So it makes me proud.
That's beautiful. Start at yes. And that they are the next generation. And they have, if we have another 40, 50 some years, they could have another 100 years, realistically. So that's a whole different show. We'll get the quantum physics and medicine people. Guys, is there any last nugget that you'd like to share? And of course, where to find you and what else that you guys are doing?
This has been great. First of all, thank you so much for having us on. I think you have an amazing show, and we appreciate being in the studio. It's a good feeling, right? Being in the studio and talking like this.
Yep.
But we're grateful. I think I just kind of gave you my mantra, the start at yes. I mean, if you're going to take anything away that I said for the last, half hour or so, that would be it. Like, try to live your life that way with curiosity, and starting at yes. That would be the number one thing. And hopefully people are, tuning into your show, downloading and following, and we hope people will follow us too.
Yeah. Mine would be show up, right? Participate in your life.
Right.
Encourage others to participate in your life and participate in others' lives and step into your power. We come to the physical world. I don't want to get too woo-woo here, but we come to the physical world with immense possibility and a responsibility to live to our fullest selves. And along the way, as we grow up, influences come and cause us to protect and sometimes to live in fear. Drop that. We've got a very short space of time on this earth, so live into it. Start with yes. Step into your power. And you can start that by also not only listening to your podcast, Heather, but the Back Nine. It's the number 9. So it's the Back Nine. You can find it on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, anywhere else you get your podcasts. And we look forward to having you join our community as we're thrilled to be a part of yours and grateful for this opportunity to be with you, Heather.
Gentlemen, Dennis, Josh, thanks so much. This has really been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
we're swinging for the rafters, and this is very cool. And thank you very much. And thanks for listening, everybody. Please remember to like, follow, review, and share this podcast. And yes, you can find Lasting Conversations on YouTube also and all the listening places. So this is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.